Anytime you're going to do a concrete overlay, the most important thing you can do is the surface preparation. So you need to make sure that that surface is, you do a good grind on it first, or a bead blast, a shot blast, something on there to really open up those pores good. And then you're going to want to address any issues with the cracks, the holes, any of those things need to be addressed first. And then, of course, the most important thing is applying the vapor shield product. You're definitely going to want to apply the vapor shield before you do any type of an overlay, just to prevent any issues with moisture or hydrostatic pressure. A lot of times guys will say, well, the concrete's dry, why do I need to worry about vapor shield? Or they're out in the desert. Doesn't matter, there's still, concrete holds moisture, and it might be dry then, but what about, we get a lot of rains like we had this winter. The ground soaks up that moisture. Concrete is porous, it'll start soaking up that moisture, and then it'll cause you a problem later on down the road. So by putting that vapor shield on, it helps prevent those issues. You're looking at about 30 cents a square foot application cost, pretty minimal when you're looking at not having to come back for a problem or something like that. So once you get those areas addressed, the first step you're going to want to do before you apply the stamp mix product is to apply the scratch coat. So just like you saw on the wall, you're going to want to mix the scratch coat up, roll the scratch coat on, and the scratch coat acts as a binder to that existing concrete, and then it allows the stamp mix to bond to it. So it kind of goes down as a primer. So once you get that rolled on and it's dried, then you're ready to go ahead and apply the stamp mix. So he's got the stamp mix mixed up here. With the stamp mix, it applies a little bit different than our other products. You have to use this tool called a gauge rake. Now this is just a small one just for this demonstration purpose. Typically it's about a 36-inch wide tool. And what that does is it puts out a set amount of material onto your surface. And I think he has this set at a 1/4 inch. So it's putting down a 1/4 inch of material on there because that determines gauge rake, correct, yes. And you either have to put on a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 inch depending on the depth of the stamp that you're going to stamp the surface with. And once he gets the 1/4 inch of material that he's looking for on there, then he will take the magic trowel and kind of smooth it out. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth because you are going to be adding texture to it anyway, but you just want to kind of smooth it out a little bit so you have a nice, even, uniform surface. And the thing when you're doing a stamp project is you have to have, your crew has to work together because you have to put out a certain amount of material. That material has to set up a little bit before you start to stamp it. So if you put too much material out, it'll start to harden up on you before you get a chance to stamp it. So you have to kind of work together as a team. So once he gets his 1/4 inch of material on there, the next step would be, like I say, you have to let that set up before you stamp it. If you tried to stamp that right now, you put your stamp on there and you start putting pressure on it, it's just going to smash down and you're not going to get any type of texture. It's just going to, it's not going to work. So while that is, after he smooths that out all the way and that's setting up a little bit, then we'll go on to the next step. And with the stamp, you have to use this material here called stamp release. You might have heard the term bubblegum release. And the reason is the stuff smells just like bubblegum. And basically what it is you're just, it's almost like Pam in a pan for cooking. You're putting that material on there so when you go to stamp it, it doesn't pull up the material with the stamp itself. So it acts as a lubricant between the stamp material and the stamp pad. And the thing is, if you're doing indoor, you really don't want to be using that powder. It gets everywhere, So this is a much simpler method. And it's still a little soft, so he's just going to tamp it with his hand. But you get the idea of getting the texture on there. Yeah. And like I said, since that skin is seamless, it's not something you have to worry about where the edge ends up. You just kind of layer it over the top of it and you go ahead and stamp it. So after it's stamped, this is what you're going to have. You're going to have a surface that's going to have a texture to it. This is what we call done with what we call a seamless skin. So there is no pattern or anything to this, it's just the texture itself. So you can, as you're stamping it, you can lay one on top of the other as you're stamping it, because there is no certain pattern to it, it's just the texture. There's no seams, there's no edges. So as you go and you stamp here, when you set the next stamp down, you're going to stamp and you're going to overlap this area here. You're not going to want to try to lay it right up to the edge. You overlap it, because all you're doing is just creating this texture on top of the surface. All of our stains are water-based stains, so they're very easy to apply. What he's doing here also is making sure you wash the surface off after you stamp it, because you have to use a material called a stamp release, so it will leave a little residue behind. So you need to go ahead and wash that off prior to the application of the stains. And all of our stains are water-based, so you can layer them over the top of each other. You can do 2, 3, 4 colors, or you can just do... No, you can thin them out, but you don't have to. So let's say you like one of the colors, like our brown or earthen brown or something. You go, I like that, but it's a little dark. Then you can add some water to it to dilute it down to make it a little bit lighter. But all of our stains are ready to use right out of the can or right out of the bucket. And there's a lot of little tricks you can do with stain. You know, you can leave this like this so it puddles in those areas. And in those areas will always look a little bit darker. You know, you can use a broom, you can brush over it if you want something a little more uniform. You can do multiple colors and then do a color wash, which we'll do on some of the other stuff, and you can see it gives you a lot of different type of effects.